All right. Well, here I am with my Ultimaker 2 clone, and if you remember on the past video, or if you want to watch that, for a little background on what I'm doing here, this was a clone. I got it used, I inspected it, determined what needed to be replaced and what was bad, potential fixes, what are my options here, right? And I think it's salvageable, right? It's actually a pretty decent printer, and like I said, when I first got it, I was thinking Ultimaker, and it popped in my head Core XY, and that's why I went and picked it up real quick. But it turns out it's not really a true Core XY. It's more like an Ender 5, right? So your X motor is operating separately than your Y, and which is not bad. I mean, we have an Ender 5 down here in the house. It's been modified and it prints great. So what I was thinking, given the problems I'm having with the LCD screen here, it's going out. It's kind of hard to read. The letters and numbers are all jumbled, and given I was trying to calibrate and check out the extruder motor, and on these Ultimaker 2s, the firmware, they make it tough for you to do that, right? They put the control on the board. You hook up on Cura, and then plug in into your laptop, whatever. Plug it in, get up on Cura, and you can update the firmware. But that's it. It's like, well, I want to modify the firmware. I want to look at it. I want to see what's going on. And they put it all here on the board and saying, oh, everything's automatic, right? It's like, no. they're making it tough. I think they quit doing that on the Ultimaker 2s. Correct me if I'm wrong. But now on the later models, you can download different firmware and stuff. But given that, I'm thinking I'm just going to go ahead and gut this out. Well, not gut it out completely. I'm going to replace the board and the display, because I had all this stuff here left over, some leftover parts. This came off of, this is the Big Tree Tech E3 RRF version 1.1. This came off of one of the Ender 3s, the used Ender 3s that I had, and it came out of there because I swapped it for another board. And this is the stock display for the Ender 3 Pro, and I upgraded it and put the TFT 35 on it. So I had this for spare, had this for spare if this isn't working. Then I have a number of these stock Ender 3 Pro boards that would probably work also, but hopefully this will work. The E3 RRF, because I know it's a 32-bit board and it has the 2209 steppers on it, and so it would be a 32-bit silent board. And it looks like it'd actually be a pretty easy swap out. So I'm going to take the display off, make a case or a cover or something, a case where I can mount it to the lumen extrusions here. That wouldn't look too bad, would it? Like that. And then I still have the Raspberry Pi, I think it's a 3. Raspberry Pi 3 here that I can hook through, and I think I'd be happier that way. I'd have control of the firmware. I can have control over the components, where I can calibrate everything, adjust everything I need, and once we get it rolling, then we'll look at these other pieces that I need to replace, mainly the bearings. So that's where it stands. I'm going to swap out the board, hook up the new display, and then we can at least check out this motor and see what's going on. We can determine if it's a bad motor or if it's just something that just needs to be reset or calibrated, you know, and then we'll worry about swapping those out. Alright, so you can see everything seems to be plugging right in. They're pretty standard. Picking up the XYZ and extruder motors. There's your X, Y, and Z stops. The 2 fans. This is for the heater up the hot end, and then this one, once I get this off, you'll connect the heating bed. This is the DC in here, and over here the TFT display. The only thing when this is in, so your SD card slot, I was trying to figure out where I could mount this where I have access to it, but it'd be kind of tough. So, but I'll show you what I'm going to do. I probably won't be using this stock Ender 3 display. I have a TFT display down here that I was using for another project, and it got put on hold, so I will probably use it because I already have it on a casing, and it has the SD cards accessible here on the TFT, so it'll be much more convenient, you know. I'll mount it up here, but I'll show you that in a minute. I'm just trying to get this board out of here. And it looks like the only thing I'm going to have to look into a little closer is so you can see the thermistor and the temp sensor here. This one for the hotbed and this one for the hot end, I'm going to have to change the plug types on it. That's about the only thing I can see that that was like that. Let me and here you can see on my laptop, you can barely see it here. I was just following this wiring diagram, and this was on the BQ site, and to get the detail I want, I'll probably go look on GitHub, and you know, I want to find out where to plug in the LED lights and the way the Raspberry Pi set up, where I can have the power going directly to it. And but other than that, that's about it. Yeah, so here I just plugged it in. So there's the display. This is the TFT, has the touch screen and everything on it, and simple to plug in. It's set and ready to go, and you can see that's why I have access here for the SD card slot. I don't have to worry about it here on the board. So I have the external control. So that worked out pretty good. I'll probably have to get another one from my other project, but that's on the back burner, so no problem. I'll use this one here. Let's see, I need to separate on the power supply and make sure what's going on here. I just need a single power and a ground going to the board, and I think that's it. So I'll take a look back here on the power supply. No big deal, we're almost there. I just need to switch these connectors, these two, and maybe the LED lights too. Let me look at this closer and see where I can plug this in. Alright, so just a bit of sad news here, or bad news. The board shows it's powering up, and the display, it lights up, it just won't find the printer. It says no printer attached. And what I thought was interesting, see, it powers up through that, But this, if I just take this and connect it to the stock Ender 3 board, yeah, nothing. So I think the board is powering up. This is powering up, but there's nothing else going on in the board. It's just not readable. I think I'm just going to have to switch over. Use the stock, the factory Ender 3 Pro board along with this. And the only reason I wanted to use this so I'd have a SD card slot here on the external port of it. But if I do this, I need to figure out a way where I can mount the board and have access to the card slot. You know what I mean? I could always just leave it down here, and whenever I want to print something off, I'd either have to do it, lift up the floor of it and put the card in, or, well, maybe if I hook up the Octoprint, then maybe I won't be so reliable on that card slot, So, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start swapping cables here. I got everything else done. I got the correct connector ends, and so should be an easy swap. Just 1, 2, 3, and then we'll connect this up and see how it. Hopefully, it'll work. Okay, that was pretty quick. Just the bare bones, and I do see an extra power output here that I can probably connect the lights. But then if I do it that way, it's going to be always on as soon as I turn the machine on. Before I had the settings so the LED lights were only on when it was printing. But using this power supply here, it'll just whenever you flick it on, it's going to be on, which isn't bad. I mean, but anyway, let's do a test. Let's power it on and see if this sucker will turn on. I think I got everything where it should be. Yep, fans are on. Something is clicking. So this was something interesting I ran into. I was flipping back and forth between these boards. This one here, let me put my glasses on so I don't get all mixed up here. Yeah, so this was the E3RRF, that Big Tree Tech board that I was hoping would get working because it has the 2209 steppers and all that stuff. Well, when I put it on there and I hooked up this TFT, and I never could get, it would never boot up, right? It would show the TFT would be, on, but you saw that, it was just saying no printer attached. So I went and switched the boards. This is the stock Creality, the Ender 3 board, and this is the stock display. Now I got it to come on, but something is going on with these temp sensors here. Whenever I'd plug any one of them in, I'll show you what I get. So that's usually a sign that say you have the thermistor hooked up and it's shorting out somewhere, right? So this one I have the temp sensor for the nozzle up here, and the one for the heating bed is not connected. Whichever one, it just does it every time. But when I disconnect them both, it turns on. Kind of strange. So so this is something new to me. I know that when I heard that first loud beep when you first turn it on, I've had that problem before, and it was a shorted out temp sensor at, on the heater block, and I changed the heater block and the thermistor, everything, and it solved the problem. So I'm going to look up here on both the heated bed and the up here on the hot end and see, is this thing wired differently than what I'm used to? I don't know. So let me turn all this off and we'll see what's going on. So I think I found the problem with whenever I take the temperature control off, it's acting like it's shorted out, right? It just beeps, or until I take these off, and then it boots up fine, but I have no control over, I can't turn the heat on, all that good stuff. Now I did get everything moving, the X, Y, and the Z, but I need to reverse the Z because whenever I'm pushing, to move it plus, it's going up. Just like these do, right? So I need the platform to go down. So I got to reverse that. But the biggest thing, you see, I messed up my connector there from pulling it in, pushing it in, pulling it out too many times. I think I swapped this thing out twice. I was trying that other board, but I'm convinced that other board is a goner. So this one, I know it's a good board, and this is the V4.2.2, so it's one of the later Ender 3. It's not a quiet one, but I think the 427, something like that, would be a quiet board. But it has but at least that's a 32-bit board, and I think I'm going to go with that. And when I measured off the resistance, I was figuring, okay, is there something weird the way they wired up, the thermistor and the temperature control and all that stuff? I don't know if wiring up is different, but when I took a look and I read the resistance on it, on this, the way it sits now is like 110, right? And on an Ender, if I remember right, it's more like 1200. The resistance is much higher on these because it's a different type of temperature control, the way that's plugged in. And with this, it's only 110, so this board is actually reading it as a shorted out when it isn't really. So I'm going to go on the firmware and downloaded the latest Marlin, and I'm going to configure it to fit my setup here. So I'm editing Marlin. I'm going to reverse the Z and going to look and see if there's a setting for what type of temperature sensor it uses, and switch that over, and anything else I can think of, if there's anything that I need to look out for Octopi, and eventually, if this starts working really good, eventually I really like the BL Touch, or the 3D Touch even. I have, that one's a 3D Touch. The other two are BL touches and seems to work fine. But we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, I will update the firmware and get this thing started. Alright, well, sorry for the glare, but I wanted to show you. See here under the thermal settings, you go through, so the -5, this is the PT100. This is what's on the Ultimaker board. And you can see the settings. Usually it's number 1. This is what goes with all the, you know, like the standard Ender 3s and all that good stuff. And that's usually marked in number 1 in 000 all the way. But you can see you have to define this max 31865 sensor, which goes from 0 to 100 ohms. So that's what we're looking for. So before, you know, that's blanked out. So we need to activate that, and you can see here's the -5 for that type of sensor. And that's about it. I just went through, put -5 on sensor 0, which goes to the hot end. There's the temp sensor for the bed. And then define so it'll read it at 100 ohms, not the 100K ohms. And so right now, that's the deal. The board is set to, you know, for this 100 kilo ohms, and but the actual sensor is only putting out 100, so it's reading it as a short. So that's the main setting there. So I'm going to go through here, and on the movement I'll reverse the X. The Z travel. I'll invert it so that it will go down positive. So another change I want to do, so it'll correctly home. X and Y, that's fine. It has the X, and here's let's see, what is this? That's the Y stop. And where is the X stop? Oh, here's the X, right in front of me. So here's the X stop and the Z stop. Now this one, the Ultimaker, it's set up with a max stop here, and you see this little pin that sticks out of the bed, and that's why it always goes down, pop, it reads the max, and I don't know what it's doing, then it comes back up. When you're homing it, then you make your adjustments for the bed leveling. I think I'm going to go the other direction. I'd rather have it have a Z min stop. I'll move the Z stop up here somewhere so it'll go up, reach the min along with the X and Y, and then do the homing, and I can make my adjustments. And then I'll just set a Z max. Say, in the spec I think it's what, 205. The build area is like 235 by 235 by 205 or something like that. But I think I'm going to do that. I'll be thinking on it. I'll look and see, well, maybe if I leave it there, have it go down to the max stop, and then go up 205 millimeters to home, and that would be at its min. But I don't know, I'm tempted to just move that Z stop. Alright, I finally got this going where I can do a test print. I made a bunch of changes here. Hopefully I won't skip over any. I was too busy and I didn't film everything, but I'll point out what I did. So you can see I loaded the Ender 3 Pro. I had to modify it quite a bit actually. So I reversed the Z, and let's see, the limit switches here. You can see here's the X, here's the Y, and down here was the Z. Well, I had to reverse all that, so I made a bracket here and flipped this plunger pin and put the minimum, the min and stop up here. Now I also found out that on the Ultimaker board it is normally closed, and then when the switch hits it opens. Well, this needs to be, it needs to be reversed on this, so I had to go back and resolder the limit switches so that it'll be normally open and closed when it hits the switch. What else? The Thermistor. They use a different type of thermistor. Like I said before, it was showing this board was detecting that it was shorted because the resistance was so low. Well, I went and got the replacement thermistor for this. It has the that tube end on it that can slide in, and this thermistor I just took the bed off and used this capstone tape you see right there and taped it to the bottom so it'll detect the heat, of course. Let's see what else. I put these smoothers on here. I know this wasn't going to be a silent board, but you can see it quieted it down quite a bit actually. So and so far so good. And I went and calibrated all of the Z motors, and once I started looking at them, because I had to reverse the extruder motor, it was going backwards, so I went and now I looked at the plug first, and it looks like, so this was an aftermarket motor. It wasn't the original. I'll say aftermarket. It wasn't the original motor, and somebody had to rewire to make it fit with the Ultimaker. Well, I think I went back and put it back to normal, and by doing that, you know, there was one side, you can see the color codes here, it's blue, red, green, and black going from right to left. And originally it was red, blue, green, and black, so I just flipped one side, so now it's blue, red instead of red, blue. And so that reversed the motor, and then I had to calibrate it, and with this Ender board it had the stock value was 93 steps per millimeter, and I had to up it to 800 to make this one work. But you can see it's finally laying down some filament. The other ones were just about right. The X and Y I left at 80 millimeters per second. That was per the Ender spec. And I think the Z, it was a very minimal change from like 400 down to 395 or something like that. I was just wanting to tweak it so that I can have a better chance of getting a good first layer once I and without any layering problems. I think I'm paranoid with layering problems after working with this one for so long, which I will be working on again. But for now, this one is almost running, and we'll see how this turns out. And in the meantime, you can see where this has cracked off and the motor's just being shoved way down. So I'm going to reprint this whole, I don't know, what would you call that, the Z-axis plate here, the bottom and the top. The top looks like in good shape, but if I'm gonna swap that out, I might as well. And I'll probably start looking for these metal braces through here, just little stuff now. But at least we've got it printing Going through this firmware was a pain in the butt. I tried the Ender 5, everything was reversed. Tried the Ender 3 like 4 different times and finally got it rolling. But there was a lot of tweaking, there was a lot of difference between this Ender board and the Ultimaker board. But I think I got it all covered, so I hope I didn't forget anything. I'm just going to be replacing parts, reprinting, and replace these bearings, hook up the LED lights, hook up the Raspberry Pi, stuff like that. I just want to see how the first print comes out. And I'll come back and we can look at it. Well, all right. Took it off of there. And it actually looks pretty good. Let me, yeah, there's some ghosting going on, especially on the Y. And if you look real close, so when it very first started printing, you can see the layer down here. And how many layers is that up? Who knows? 6 or 7 layers up. It looks like it's shifted. And then up here at the top, just a few layers before. So, but overall for the first print, I would say I'm pretty pleased, because I know, I showed you that that Z bracket there holding the motor on is cracked across there, so that could be contributing to that little layer shift here. Maybe it, as it's moving up and down, it creaked or something. So really not bad. And the way this is going, so this is, let's see, I'm kind of mixed up here on my X and Y's, because usually, am I wrong? Usually there's an X here and the Y here in the Z, but the Y is here, and it printed off this way, so with the X pointing towards the rear, and then you can see where it came back here when it was done. So that was from the Ender 3, right? I just left it that way because my limit switches are back on that corner, and I kind of liked it there. But I will probably, I'll probably do it where when it's finished, it'll go back over to the home. That way it leaves all this open to get your just little tweaks here and there. But all right. Well, that's not bad. Alright, well I think that's got it for this video. At least we got the Creality board. This is the 4.2.2 that came off of a Ender 3 Pro. And that and the display. And just replaced the Ultimaker board. Because that Ultimaker, the board was okay. It was just the display was it was so hard to read. I was like, man, if I'm just going to switch it all out, right? And but along the way, I found the differences between these that I mentioned before, with the limit switches, the thermistors, and then getting the firmware set up. But after that, I guess my next step, the next time you'll see it, a lot of cosmetic changes. First off, I'm going to replace this. You can see it's just cracked. I'm going to make a housing for this that we can, I can put down here or up there, probably just down here. That'd be fine. And yeah, so that's about it. So this project's almost done, just a few more tweaking, like I said, but it's up and running. That's the big thing. So if you ever have one of these Ultimaker 2s and and switching over to a different board, whether it be Creality or Big Tree Tech or whoever. And you can kind of follow along and see the little changes that I went through. And well, that's it. So be sure to like, subscribe, and watch for my next video.